All right, folks, so we started that last piece with anxious brain and curious brain, right? So raise your hand again, let me just see. How many of you have or feel that anxious brain, you were in that line? Okay. Oh, you guys don't seem too anxious. You're like, maybe. I don't want anybody to know. And curious brain, how many of you guys were there? Okay. All right, good. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. We did the brain bus stop, so let's see what that really has to do with. So we talk about anxious and curious brain. We're going to go around, and it'll be a really quick hit of you telling me what you're anxious or curious about. If someone else says what you were going to say, then it's okay, you can pass, or if you have something else, you can add to it. So we don't want to have the same person, oh, I agree with what Sola said, oh, I agree with what Pam said. We just want to go around and get as much in as we can, all right? So Serge, we're going to start with you, if that's okay, young man. What are you anxious or curious about today?
I'm curious about where we are in space right now.
I can deal with that. Rohan?
I'm anxious about not remembering what I need to remember.
Okay, very good. We'll talk about that. We'll give you actually a piece to hopefully help you with that. Maria?
I'm anxious about, I think I have, you don't even know how to put it. I guess I'm anxious about double, like second guessing myself and overthinking it.
Okay,
But Maria stood on the
that
curious
can
side.
happen. Hold on a second.
Oh wait, I'm not anxious.
You stood on the curious
I'm
side.
curious, never mind.
You stood on the curious side.
It's your
I'm anxious
call.
now.
I somehow went with the anxious group.
You
No,
can
I'm-
jump over. You're good.
Yeah, I'm
You're all
just
right?
curious about,
Same thing?
same thing.
All right.
Yeah.
Soleil?
I'm curious if I'll be able to pull this off.
Say that again?
I'm curious if I'll be able to pull this off.
Pull it off. You just got finished with the brain bus stop. You pulled off what you need to pull off already. All right, let's go, Megan.
I'm anxious about memorizing like all of the intricate details for
Uh-huh.
each of like, the competencies and the clusters and
Okay. We're going to go over some stuff with that too that'll be able to help you guys. Angelo?
I'm anxious about the written and the oral, where to combine the written, the studying, to the components and the oral.
Okay, we're definitely going to talk more about the written exam and the oral exam and let you know some more stuff about that. Pam?
I'm curious as to what happens if you have like a crazy client and you can't reel them in.
So I was only kidding about we have a really bad client. And you'll do your best. You've been training for this, right? So same thing, I'm a basketball fan, you guys know it. You train for the finals, you do your best, and then if you try something new, you may end up kind of like my Knicks did, right? At home watching the finals, right? And you go from there. So we've been training you for it, and you should be all right. Christine?
So I'm curious to know the structure of the written exam and curious to see that at 57 years old, I haven't taken a test since 2004.
Okay, so you're overdue for a test. And we're gonna go over everything that you need to know about the format of the written exam. Okay, we're really good at that. Simone?
Does my curious have to be about tests?
It's gotta be about what we're doing
Okay.
today and
Because I
tomorrow.
was curious about flights, so I'm curious about what's next after Saturday.
Okay, great. So we will have some discussions on that, actually, when we're done with everything on Saturday. Sherry Ann?
It was said by my colleague
You
about
have to come over.
memory.
Okay, that's cool. Alicia?
I'm curious to know if it's going to just come natural or if I'm going to really be in that memory-based like space where I go, did I remember that based on what I've done so far?
Okay, good. So you guys will all second guess yourselves. And you'll all, as soon as you get out of the testing room, go and look at your notes to see whether you got it right or not. Nothing's changed since like elementary school, right? It's the same thing. But we are going to talk a little bit about anxious brain and curious brain and remind you guys something about it. So anxious brain, we talk about these things, right? What do I have to do to save myself? They all generally go and Ramon does such a great job with brain research and all of that when he goes through MBI. And we all know that we have a part of the brain that determines whether we are in trouble or not. right? And you guys have all heard of flight or fright, right? So you know, flight or fight. You might be frightened, which leads you to flighting, right? Bouncing or fighting. So when you have an anxious brain, you're trying to save yourself, you have to know what's happening, right? So right now, if you're anxious, I gotta know exactly what's gonna be on the test tomorrow. I gotta know exactly how you're gonna do it. What kind of test is it gonna be? What are you gonna have? Is it everything that I need? Did I look at this? Did I do this? And you're gonna drive yourself bonkers. But that's okay if that's who you are. You gotta shake it off and get it out and then move from there, right? The anxious brain, I have to be certain. I have to be right, right? That's the perfectionist in us. And unfortunately, if you're a perfectionist, I have some bad news for you. Nothing and no one is perfect, right? The only perfection that you can have is being imperfect. So you just gotta go with it and then go from there, right? You want to avoid the threat, and right now some of you are feeling anxious because you're threatened with, well, what'll happen if I don't pass? What'll happen if I do this? Whatever. I was really surprised I didn't hear that. That was usually like one of the first people. I want to know what happens if I don't pass. I'm like, oh, anxious brain, all right? Even though you said you were curious, you're really anxious, right? And then you have to be prepared to react, right? And some of us actually react better under fire. Very few people though. And usually it's for a short amount of time, right? So just like your body, you know, there's a guy who I'll leave him nameless, but he's from Queens, and he had an intruder come into the building, and he has a building with little kids, kindergarten to I think 3K to like 2nd grade. And he was telling me, you know, he had to fight this guy. And he had to hold him down until the police came 20 minutes later. And he told me, he was like, he said, Reggie, you know, I work out, I go to jujitsu, and I know I have 180 seconds of power, and then after that I'm depleted. That's all I had. And I saw this guy, and in my mind, from my training, I knew that I had to subdue this guy within that time frame, because if I didn't, and somebody didn't come to help me, it was going to be all over for me, right? So that piece of being prepared to react, he was already trained on how to react. He didn't go into, I think I'm doing this. He went instinctively to what I've been taught to do. And if you guys work with that with us, as we've been training you guys over the last 6 months with this, since January, right? 5 months, 5.5, you're gonna be okay. Let's look at curious brain. Let's look at this side. All right, so curious brain is stimulated. I wanna know more. I take some of the things that would normally make me anxious and I flip it and turn it into a curious state. So with the curious brain, I'm stimulated when I seek novel experiences. Tomorrow is going to be something novel. It's going to be something you've never done before. You may have taken tests. You know, Stina hasn't taken a test since 2004, you said? Yeah, my first year as principal, like, yeah, let's go, right? So you haven't taken a test since then, but you look at it as this is a novel experience. This is something I've never done before. I'm excited about trying to do this. I'm excited to see, you know, what I retain and how well I do on something that I've been training with for the last 5.5 months, right? I focus more widely, right? I don't get narrowed if I'm curious. Right? That's why a lot of things, if you look at predator and prey, end up getting killed because they narrowly focus and they don't see what else is around them, and then the pack comes and they get them. So you gotta open up your brain and your eyes, right? Categorize and I associate by comparison. You'll be doing that as you study today and hopefully also tonight. You look at patterns. Maria came up with a wonderful pattern that works for her that she wanted to share with all of you as a way to study. And one of the reasons why we said no is because your pattern may not work for somebody else, right? But you use what's going to work for you, so you derive your own patterns. Look at that cause and effect, and then finally, you reward yourself for figuring this out. You guys know the work. One of the things we really push forward with our piece at Columbia is that this isn't a gotcha, this isn't a guess. There is nothing that's going to be on either exam that you have not seen or done before. We have prepped you, we have quizzed you. Some of us quiz more than others during the practicum. Some of us are rougher with the quizzes than others. It doesn't matter. All of that stuff was to gather you up enough strength to be able to make it through today and tomorrow. Is that all right with everybody? So if you were anxious and you're still anxious, shake it off. If you're curious, come on the curious side. We got plenty of room over there for you anxious people. Join us and let's kind of go from there. Everybody's good with that? All right, so you guys remember Learn to Judge Your Mindset? This is another piece that Ramon did day one, actually, of TLCI, right? So we want you to think about it. You know, when you're judging, right, you're thinking, what's wrong with me? How can I protect myself? Same thing as anxious, curious. You're feeling, how can I avoid this? Can I stop it? You know, can I get a headache tonight and not come tomorrow? You know, what happens if I have a bad client? Can I just squeeze out of it? Can I choose my own client, right? Like I got somebody I've already prepped. Can I bring them in, Reggie? No. Right? How do I prove I'm right with behaving and then relating? In what ways, you know, am I important? Am I worthy, right? You guys know my line. I may not be much, right? But I'm all I think about. When you think about yourself rather than the experience, you're going to have not such a hot experience. So enjoy the experience. The learner self is like, how do I understand what's going on now? Right? How do I make myself think about, well, I'm going through this. I know what I don't know. Let me work on that so I do know it before tomorrow. I know what I do know. I'm not going to really kill myself with that. Accentuate the positive, eliminate the negative. Do what you need to do, right? How am I feeling? If I'm not feeling so good, what can I do? That's why we had the brain bus stop. It was to get you to think about different things, but also to have some fun. Have fun with this. We've been working with this. I'm a fun guy. I like fun, right? What's the most appropriate way to do this? How can I contribute to getting this done or moving this situation forward? No matter what, you're moving towards exam day tomorrow. But we're going to make it something that should work really well for you and be able to go from there. We don't want it to be painful. It's not as though we're pulling teeth without Novocaine. What we're doing is just saying, oh, I'm just going in for a cleaning. I brush and floss every day. The dentist is going to say, hey, great job, Reg. Keep it up. I'll see you in 6 months. That's how tomorrow wants to be. It's not, I haven't been in there since 1992, you know what I mean, and I got a bad toothache and I need 3 root canals. We don't want it to be something that's too negative for you going from there. All right. So you guys have seen this before. This is from our guru, Dr. Terry Morbier, who actually I was on the phone with yesterday. And this is what he says about coaching. Alicia, since you're up front, do you mind doing the first paragraph for us?
Sure. Conversations in which the goal is to support a person's longer-term development. The coach shares some observations, yet spends most of the conversation asking questions and listening deeply to the coachee.
And the second paragraph, Angela?
The coach doesn't need to have the answers. The job is really to pose the questions and collaborate with the coachee on the solution.
Yeah, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Coaching conversations can occur in the moment, or they can form part of informal and formal development conversation.
Right. So we showed this again. We showed this to you again, first day. Right. We bring it back into the last day of our teaching. Is that your job is to help the client no matter what. Your job's not to solve their problem, even if they come up with something that you know very well, right? You'll be coaching someone tomorrow who's an education leader in different forms of education, right? Going, well, I'm not even gonna say what they're going from. Everybody's an education leader, but they have different jobs. Even if you know exactly what you think would work for them, that's not what we do here. You guys have been trained on this. So our job is to ask those questions to find out what's going on, right? Let's try to move the conversation along to try to help them. Let's try to get them to working with some options, and then hopefully starting to choose something and moving forward with where they want to go. All right, so let's take a look at this. The old stagecoach. We're dealing with coaching. It's about learning and a change process. Who are we looking to change during this change process when we're coaching somebody? I'm coaching Soleil right now. Who am I looking to change between the two of us?
Soleil.
Right, Soleil, right. I'm not looking to change myself, although I might get some changing, just in the way that I'm learning and going through the conversation. But I'm looking to help Soleil change in whatever way is going to make sense and then be able to go from there. All right, so written exam. Those of you who are anxious about that, what's the written exam going to be about? All right, so we're going to go deep into this a little bit later when I bring up Ed. He loves that part. But I'll go over the basics for it, all right? So it's about cognition, right? Recognition and application. You will be given questions that deal with all 3 of those things. So it's nothing new, it's nothing that you haven't seen before. You gotta recognize some patterns, some things that we've done, right? I'm gonna ask you to think a little bit about some coaching and what you would do, and then we're gonna have to actually have you apply some of that stuff. So the structure is, we have 3 parts of the written exam. The first part is gonna be that list part. We're gonna look at mastery of the foundation. So you need to know those things that are on your laminates. We talk about the success pyramid. What are the parts of the success pyramid? What does the success pyramid really go underneath, right? That's coaching competencies. Right? I'm gonna ask you questions and have you just list. Do you know the foundational stuff that you need to know? Do you know the guiding principles? You need to know those things. That's why we've been telling you now for about 3 months, know your laminates and work with them and go from there. The second part is going to be recognition. And with that, the recognition part, there's going to be some matching that's going to go on. So it's going to be old school. We're going to bring it back from Christina since she hasn't done anything since 2004. Right? There's going to be some matching. You're going to have one column that's here. Think about the bus stop activity. Right? You're going to have one column that's here. You're going to have another column that's there. And we're going to ask you, what matches? Simple. Okay? Pretty easy. There's going to be some multiple choice. So if you don't know it, you can start to do the process of elimination, right? You can go back old school to, I know it's not that, and I know it's not that. And guess what? Unlike the SATs and the LSATs and the GMATs, we're not trying to confuse you with 2 things that they both could be right. These are, one thing is right. But you'll be confused if you mix stuff up, but one thing is right. So we're talking about the success period as an example. We may be like, okay, what's one part of the success pyramid? You may have coaching process, right? Client's agenda, which is not part of that. It's part of something else. You gotta know your stuff, right? But it's not so deep rooted that it's anything that you haven't seen before. And then recognition is, like what's missing and why, or what needs to be added and why. And then go on from there. Any questions on part 1 or part 2? Part 3 is actually my favorite part, theory and application, and that's in an essay format. So you're going to have to write a little bit about coaching. I would tell you more, but I would be telling you too much, and you'd practice it, and then it wouldn't be authentic, and then you might get anxious, and I might get curious, and you may not do so well. Christine?
Is this typing or writing like we do?
We are also old school back in 2004.
Lord! We're not typing.
So we are not computer-based testing.
So we ain't chat GPT.
We are not giving you any opportunity to look at anything other than